the warm depths of the sea lives a creature whose nervous system contains about 500 million neurons, the same number as a dog. However, 2/3 of them are not in the central brain, but are distributed among 8 tentacles. Each of these possesses its own mind. The tentacles can move, solve problems, and explore the world by taste autonomously. This is not a figure of speech, but an established fact that we still find difficult to comprehend. Our channel is not just a collection of interesting facts about fauna, nor is it about finding similarities between species. It is dedicated to the map of interconnections, to how an individual organism is woven into a network almost invisible to us, and what happens to this network when one of its links disappears. We will return to this idea in every episode, each time through one theme, one creature, one node. And we suggest starting with someone who challenges our basic understanding of intelligence. For us, it is customary that intelligence is localized in the head, that it is centralized. We believe that there is a single decision-making center, and the body is merely an executive mechanism. This is how we are built. Dogs, cats, and horses are built the same way. So are birds, fish, and lizards, all vertebrates. One center and a periphery. One nervous capital and thousands of roads leading from it. Now imagine a different option. What if this same volume of nerve cells could be distributed not hierarchically, but throughout the entire body, and each part would think independently? What if the architecture of intelligence could be federal, not imperial? This is exactly how the octopus is structured. 500 million neurons is a significant number by animal kingdom standards. For comparison, a cat has 250 million. A dog has between 400 and 600 million, depending on size and breed. Humans have about 86 billion, 16 billion of which are in the cortex. Thus, in terms of the total number of neurons, the octopus is roughly on par with a dog. No less, no more. These are comparable figures. And this is already astonishing, because the octopus is an invertebrate, a mollusk. According to natural expectations, a mollusk should not have so many nerve cells. Its relative, the snail, has several tens of thousands of neurons. An oyster has even fewer. And here, 500 million. And all of this is in a body devoid of even a single bone. However, the number is not the most surprising thing. A different topology is far more important. In a dog, neurons are concentrated in the cerebrum and cerebellum. In an octopus, the central brain, containing about 170 million cells, only a third of the total, is located between the eyes and wrapped around the esophagus. Yes, the esophagus literally passes through the brain, which is one of the strangest anatomical features on the planet. A piece that is too large could theoretically damage nerve tissue, so the octopus breaks down its prey with its beak into tiny particles before swallowing. It eats by passing food through its own brain. The remaining 2/3, or approximately 330 million cells, are evenly distributed among the 8 tentacles. They are organized into structures called axial nerve cords. These are separate clusters of neurons along each tentacle. Each of them is capable of independently processing information, issuing commands to muscles, and responding to touch without consulting the central brain. Simply put, if a dog has one brain, an octopus actually has 9, 1 central and 8 peripheral. They are interconnected, but these connections are fewer than one might expect. Relatively few fibers run from the tentacles to the center and back. Each tentacle functions almost autonomously, which is physiologically confirmed. A severed octopus tentacle continues to move, respond to touch, and grasp food for up to an hour. This happens not by inertia, but under the control of its own neural circuits. There is a separate series of experiments by Israeli neurophysiologist Hochner and his colleagues. They demonstrated that when an octopus reaches for a target with a tentacle, most of the movement is not programmed by the brain. The brain only sets the direction and the general task. How the tentacle bends, bypasses an obstacle, or slows down near an object, all of this it decides itself, using local feedback loops. The brain trusts the tentacle. It does not micromanage. It acts as a director, while the actors on stage improvise according to the situation. This intelligence is quieter and more complex than commonly believed. This is the first line, its internal structure. Next, how it perceives the world.
The octopus has eyes, and they are good, with a slit pupil and high resolution. Its vision is comparable to that of a medium-sized fish. The only difference is that it lacks color receptors. Most likely, it perceives the world in shades of gray, which, frankly, only adds to the mystery, to which we will return. However, vision is not the octopus's primary sense. Its primary sense is something else. The octopus tastes the world through touch. For someone who grew up with the idea that taste is a tongue, and a tongue is one small part of the body, this sounds absurd. But it is a fact. On each of the 8 tentacles of a common octopus, according to various sources, there are between 220 and 320 suckers, depending on the size of the individual. In total, one animal has almost 2,000 suckers, and each of them serves simultaneously as an organ of touch and an organ of chemical palpation. If it touches something, it immediately understands whether it is edible, alive, or familiar from past experience. This understanding does not arise in the brain. It happens directly in the tentacle, on the spot. The sucker makes the decision itself. How this works at the molecular level, science has only recently begun to understand. The main work was carried out by Nicholas Bellono's laboratory at Harvard. In 2020, they first described a special type of cell on octopus suckers with receptors that are found nowhere else in nature. And in 2023, 2 more articles were published in the journal Nature. One was led by Bellono himself, the other by Guiping Kang and Corey Allard. They deciphered the 3-dimensional structure of these receptors using cryo-electron microscopy. As a result, a whole new class of receptor proteins was discovered. They were named chemotactile, from the words chemistry and touch. No other class of animals, except cephalopods, has them.
It is important to understand, these receptors do not work like our olfactory receptors, which detect odors dissolved in water. Their target is molecules that are almost insoluble in water. These are the ones that settle on the skin of prey, on rocks, or on crab shells, and they can only be detected by direct contact. By feeling a rock, the octopus literally senses who is on it, or was recently on it. It reads the chemical history of the surface, not the smell in the water, but a specific trace left by a living creature. This is comparable to the difference between smelling a room and running your palm over a table to understand who dined there yesterday. In the squid, the octopus's closest relative, the same receptors are structured differently. They are tuned to substances dissolved in water and to a bitter taste. The reason lies in their lifestyle. The squid is an ambush predator.
It needs to instantly assess what it has caught, whether it's prey or not, and decide whether to let go or not. It doesn't feel around. It grabs and makes a decision on the fly. The octopus, however, is an explorer. It meticulously examines the surface, figures out who is where, and only then acts. The chemistry of the receptors perfectly matches the behavior. This is a rare example where science can directly see how evolution adapts a molecule to a specific habit. Two related species, long diverged, took different paths, developing two different ways of thinking through food. One thinks with its lips, the other with its entire skin. Now, add this to the mix. Each tentacle independently decides whether an object is edible or not. Not the central brain, but the tentacle itself. And only if it deems it necessary does it relay information to the center. Imagine that when you shake someone's hand, your hand itself would determine if they are kind, healthy, familiar, and decide whether to report this information to your brain. This is precisely what an octopus does, with 8 tentacles simultaneously every second, with every movement. 8 parallel sensory streams, each with its own decision-making instance. One body, 8 observers, and one center that sometimes listens to them, and sometimes simply lets the tentacles work independently. And this is where something begins that isn't talked about as often. It's no longer just about sensory perception, it's about behavior itself. In 2010, Roland Anderson and Jennifer Mather from the Seattle Aquarium conducted a simple experiment. 8 giant Pacific octopuses. 2 people, both unknown to them. One fed the octopuses for 2 weeks. The other irritated them with short touches of a stiff brush. Both people wore the same uniform to rule out recognition by clothing. 2 weeks were enough.
The octopus's reaction was not abstract. They have a skin pattern, a dark stripe across the eye, which biologists call the eye bar. It appeared when the irritator came. It did not appear when the feeder came. Tentacles reached out or retracted. A jet from the funnel went in a specific direction. In larger individuals, even the breathing rate changed. The octopuses were not confused. In 2 weeks, they remembered specific people, not the uniform, not the smell of food, but the people themselves. And they distinguished between them. This is a documented case of individual recognition in a creature that has no face, no voice, and no social life in our sense of the word. Octopuses are solitary. They rarely encounter each other except for a short breeding season. In theory, they have no reason to recognize their own kind. Yet, they still distinguish, not abstract enemies and friends, but specific individuals. They have a memory for individuals. In a creature that, by and large, knows no one its entire life, and that's far from all, an octopus solves problems. A classic example is a jar with a screw-on lid. Inside, a crab. The octopus takes the jar in its tentacles, examines it from all sides, finds the lid, and unscrews it. Not immediately. The first time can take up to 15 minutes. Subsequent times are faster. It learns. And the most interesting thing is, it remembers. Weeks after the experiment, if presented with the same jar again, it opens it faster than the first time. It has long-term memory for specific tasks it has encountered. There are experiments by Giovanna Fiorito and her team in Italy in the late 80s. They showed that an octopus can learn not only from its own experience, but also, which is quite strange, by observing another octopus. One individual watches through a transparent partition as another solves a problem. Then it is placed in the same aquarium. It solves it faster.
An octopus, which has no social life, uses social learning. This shouldn't work, but it does. A separate chapter is tool use. In 2009, Australian researcher Julian Finn and his colleagues described a species they named the coconut octopus. It lives in the murky bays of Indonesia, where there are no natural shelters. People in these same areas use coconut shell halves as utensils and then discard them into the sea. The coconut octopus collects these halves. It takes two, places one inside the other, walks across the bottom on its tentacles in a so-called bipedal walk, and when danger approaches, it folds them together, forming a temporary shelter for itself. This, by biologists' definition, is tool use. It doesn't grow from the body, it is carried for future benefit, and it requires planning. All of this is a rare phenomenon among invertebrates. The octopus here stands alongside crows, chimpanzees, and elephants, not with the mollusks to which it formerly belongs. The octopus plays. Cases have been documented in laboratories where an individual pushes a floating object, for example, an empty vial, into the water current from a filter, catches it back, and pushes it again, just because, without food reinforcement. Play behavior in an invertebrate is something that 30 years ago could not have made it into a scientific paper, because in the science of that time, it was believed that invertebrates did not play. Play is a privilege of mammals, and now it's part of textbooks. And the octopus escapes. This is a separate page in the history of aquaristics. The creature squeezes through an opening the size of a quarter, if the situation demands it. It remembers where the exit is, if it found it once. It opens the lid from the inside. There are known cases where an octopus would leave its aquarium at night, walk across the room on the floor, climb into a neighboring aquarium, eat fish, and return to its own tank before the staff arrived. In scientific laboratories, cameras have long been installed for octopuses, not only to observe their behavior, but also to understand exactly where they go and how. A mind without a skeleton is very difficult to keep in a cage. In 2016, philosopher Peter Godfrey Smith's book was published. It is titled Other Minds, and this is a reference to the classic question of the philosophy of mind. How do we even know that another creature has an inner experience? Godfrey Smith himself had been diving for many years by the time he wrote the book and had observed octopuses in nature. His thesis in this book is simple and, if you think about it, astonishing. Cephalopods are the only major experiment that the living world has conducted with intelligence separately from our branch. Our minds, of primates, of mammals in general, trace back to a common ancestor with birds, reptiles, fish.
All of us have a nervous system built on one architecture, with a centralized brain, with a spine, with bilateral symmetry of one type. Cephalopods diverged from a common ancestor with all of us a very long time ago. By various estimates, from 550 to 600 million years ago, long before the branch leading to us even began to form a nervous system in its current form. And they built complexity from scratch, according to a different scheme. This is what it means. To understand what intelligence is in principle, and not just our own, there is only one benchmark on the planet besides us. Not dogs, not chimpanzees, and not even crows, with whom we diverged later and whose nervous system is structurally similar to ours. That benchmark is octopuses. Everything else complex on Earth is just variations of one basic architectural idea spread out over time. But the octopus is a different idea. Another answer to the same question of how to exist in a world full of other creatures and not lose. And, apparently, this answer works. 500 million years, and they are still here. Several details complete the picture. An octopus has 3 hearts. One pumps blood through the body, the other 2 through the gills. Its blood is blue. Its basis is hemocyanin, a copper-containing protein, not iron-containing hemoglobin like ours. Hemocyanin transports oxygen less efficiently, but functions better in cold water and at low concentrations. This is the chemistry of the deep sea,
inherited by the octopus from millions of years of life in different layers of the ocean. Now, let's talk about the skin. An octopus changes color in a fraction of a second. This is due to specialized cells in 3 layers: chromatophores with pigment, iridophores that reflect light, and leucophores that provide white color.
Working together, these layers allow it to mimic not only the color, but also the texture of the seabed, be it smooth rock, rough coral, or scattered pebbles. And here's the promised enigma. The octopus lacks color vision. It doesn't distinguish colors, yet it reproduces them with high accuracy. How? There is no answer yet. One hypothesis, which emerged in 2021, suggests that light-sensitive molecules found in the octopus's skin itself, around its suckers, might somehow allow it to sense the color of its environment directly through its skin. This means its skin is not only an organ of touch, but possibly also of sight. We don't know for sure yet, but such a suggestion alone overturns conventional categories of perception. A different nervous system, different blood, a different heart architecture, skin as an organ of perception. Altogether, it resembles a set of solutions taken from a completely different book than ours. And now, the most unexpected twist. It is this paradigm shift that justifies all our previous narrative. Everything listed: distributed intelligence, memory for specific people, problem solving, play, tool use, complex skin patterns, 3 hearts, fits into a period of 1 to 2 years. This is approximately how long most octopus species live. 1 year, 1.5, 2 at most. They don't accumulate experience over decades. Their life cycle is rigidly scheduled: birth, growth, a single mating in their life, guarding the clutch, and death. The female dies immediately after the young hatch. The male dies even earlier, shortly after mating. There's even a special term for this phenomenon: semelparity, a single reproductive event inevitably followed by death. Aging and death soon after egg-laying are genetically programmed in octopuses. And upon the foundation of these fleeting lives, evolution has built everything we've discussed. 500 million neurons, 8 autonomous minds, chemical sensing, memory for people, tool use, millions of generations of natural selection, but each individual generation exists for only a year. Thousands of such cycles have led to the creature we see when we lift the lid of an aquarium. A creature that during its single short year of life explores another possible path to intelligence, and then dies, leaving behind no students, no memories, no trace, except fertilized eggs. Everything that octopus knew vanishes with it. There is a very quiet but important thought embedded in this. Our intelligence serves a long life. The octopus's intelligence serves 1 short year. This is neither better nor worse. It's simply a different economy, a different price for intelligence. A living system has decided to invest all these complex mechanisms into 1 year. And it continues to do so for 800 million years. But one octopus is not the whole story. The most interesting part is yet to come.
Imagine an ordinary octopus on a reef in a warm sea, the Mediterranean, Caribbean, or off the coast of Southeast Asia. It hunts. Its prey includes small crabs, shrimp, bivalves, and occasionally reef fish. It does this quietly, stealthily, at night or dusk. Let's mentally remove it from this ecosystem, just for a minute, and see what happens. Changes begin with the crab population. While the octopus was here, it kept their numbers in check. Now, in its absence, there are more crabs. They eat young mollusks and echinoderms, sea urchins and stars. Their numbers decline. At the same time, reef fish, which were prey for both octopuses and moray eels, lose one of their main food competitors. Some species of small fish begin to reproduce more actively, others less frequently. The proportions change. The fifth step leads to the following. Sea urchins, already fewer due to crabs, are now insufficient to clear rocks of algae. Algae, growing unchecked, smother young corals.
Coral growth slows down. After several years without the octopus, the composition of the reef will inevitably change. You won't see it immediately. In fact, you won't notice anything. It's just that in 10 years, the same reef will be different, a little murkier, with a different set of fish, with fewer corals. The water will lose its clarity, the bottom will darken, and no one will be able to pinpoint the exact moment when everything changed. The changes came gradually, through a 5-link chain initiated by the disappearance of one creature. Note that we talked about intelligence, about 500 million neurons, about the chemistry of suckers, about the ability to recognize people, about the bold idea that these creatures are our only partners in an incredible experiment that life has conducted twice. But it turns out that all this intelligence is just a node in a network, where each element individually lacks complete meaning. Remove the octopus, the crab suffers.
The crab suffers. The urchin suffers. The urchin suffers. The coral suffers. Remove one link, and by the 5th step, you won't recognize the reef. This is what every episode of this channel is about. Not about the creature itself, but about its place in the network. About how the living world is not a collection of individual figures, but a pattern where each thread supports the others. And that removing one thread is possible. But then we will stop understanding why the pattern no longer aligns. And here is the figure promised at the beginning. Global octopus catch, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations for 2023, is about 400,000 tons annually. This, very roughly, is tens of millions of individuals every year. By various estimates, the catch has roughly doubled in the last 30 years. Given that an octopus lives 1 to 2 years, the population renews quickly but also collapses faster. It's difficult to restore it because each mother mates once in her life and dies soon after her young hatch. One family, one generation. If a generation is wiped out, the next one won't appear for a long time. I won't tell you what to do with this number. There's a lot to say about it in many different ways, and that will be a conversation for other episodes. I'll just say, it exists. And the next time you see an octopus on a counter, or in a video where it opens a jar, or in a documentary film, remember, before you is a creature with as many neurons as a dog, 8 parallel thoughts, a year of life, and it manages 5 complex processes in the reef ecosystem, more quietly than commonly thought. And this happens without our attention. What to do with all this? The octopus is the first creature in our series because it squarely raises a question. Intelligence is not what we think it is. It's not necessarily a head with a large brain. It's not necessarily a centralized system. It's not necessarily a vertebrate animal. It's not necessarily even a single entity. Intelligence can be distributed. It can taste the world. It can see with its skin. It can fit into a year. It can consist of 8 parts, each thinking for itself. And, apparently, this is not the only such variation in the living world. We just know even less about the others. On Monday, you can do one thing. Find a short video where an octopus solves a problem, opening a jar, finding its way out of a maze, using half a coconut as a shell, or squeezing through a crack. There are many such videos publicly available. Play it without a voiceover. Just observe. Don't aim to understand if it's smart. Don't draw parallels with yourself. Watch how it thinks. 8 tentacles, and each one is exploring. Sometimes one of them finds a solution before the central brain. Sometimes the central brain stops one and switches to another. And this is not a trained trick. This is a creature thinking in a different way, right before you. 5 minutes of such observation is enough to make your idea of intelligence less rigid. It expands, and that means it becomes more honest. And here's the question we leave you with. If an octopus has 8 almost autonomous tentacles, how many are in the frame at any given moment? 1 or 9? We are used to 1 body, 1 consciousness, 1 head, 1 will, 1 center. With an octopus, perhaps it's not like that at all. Perhaps these are 8 small consciousnesses that have agreed to live in 1 body. Or 1 consciousness distributed across 8 exploring appendages. Or something for which there are no words in our grammar at all. And this is not a mistake in definition. This is a different way of being someone. We will probably never understand what it's like, but we can at least notice that it exists. And that alone is an expansion of the world by 1 step. Another intelligence is right under your feet. Not metaphorically, but literally. Not in the ocean, but in the forest. Not in the head of a creature, but in the fungal network under tree roots that connects every tree to hundreds of others and transfers water, minerals, and alarm signals between them. It emerged 450 million years ago, when the first plants just came ashore. Without it, they wouldn't be there. And you know almost nothing about it. In the next episode, Mycorrhiza, the intelligence underfoot.